We are at an extraordinary moment in history. It's a deeply, deeply ironic moment, actually, because AI is giving us such power to solve problems. And yet, we're in a moment where most of the superpowers are literally meeting as we speak to discuss what they're going to do, which has implications for whether we're going to be in a peaceful environment or not in a peaceful environment. And so I want to talk to you today about geopolitics and AI. And particularly, how do we move from a world that's been really defined by conflict and by scarcity and unsolved problems and arguing about who gets what, to one in which AI helps us get closer to not just cooperation, but genuine abundance, so that we don't have to argue about scarcity any longer. And how do we lean into what's already happening, which is record problem solving? Now, today, most people in the realm of AI, they are not able to keep up what's happening in their own field, let alone everything else that's going on in the world. Geopolitics is disruptive. It is annoying and distracting. But nonetheless, it's totally central to what we're trying to do in the AI field, because we're trying to solve the problems that create geopolitics. So, is AI on its own? No. We are definitely in a world where AI is working in conjunction with the massive race for supercomputing, and of course for quantum computing as well. We're getting some help from some amazing, extraordinary physical innovations that are happening. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with what's happening with chips, with Google's new Willow chip, which maybe there's a bit of hyperbole in this, but it seems that their new Willow chip is able to solve a problem that previously they had thought would take literally 10 septillion years. Now, no one knows what that means. So, to be clear, what is that? It's longer than the entire history of our universe, but it would be solved in that time. But now they can solve that same problem in 5 minutes. This is a revolution in human history. This ability to take problems that previously took forever to solve, if ever, and now can be solved in minutes. This begins to raise the issue of the greatest constraint we have is not our analytical ability, it's our imagination. It's our imaginal ability. And the Chinese have just announced in the last couple of weeks a new chip of their own that's a quadrillion times faster than the existing supercomputers. So when people say we can't solve this problem, they're not aware of the tools that we are being given right now that will completely change the landscape of problem solving. We're also changing the way we manage the data, obviously. There's so much talk about all the new data centers that are going in all over the world. The power draw that's required to support those data centers, and everyone's saying there's not enough energy and we'll never be able to do it. Yeah. The thing is, the innovation is happening faster than our thought process. So we're stuck in yesterday's solution, not understanding, well, actually, we're already building a whole new generation of data centers. And there's something new coming on the horizon. I don't know how many of you have heard about neuromorphic chips, where we take human brain cells to direct the activity on a chip. This is the most fundamental integration of the organic and the synthetic to create a whole new way of processing information. And guess what? Neuromorphic chips don't require refrigeration. So, do we need huge power draw to build these new data centers? Maybe not. This is a complete change in our understanding of the future. So, whatever problems we have, whatever glitches in the system exist, we are increasingly having solutions because AI is the glue that brings together so many diverse technologies and allows us to solve problems at a record speed. I want to be clear that what I am talking about is literally humanity is at a once-in-a-species moment. We're undergoing an extraordinary revolution in the nature of our relationship with reality itself. As a practical example, throughout the history of humankind, we always had to start with a material and then turn it into what we needed. We needed a tree to build a boat or build a desk or build a table. This has completely reversed thanks to artificial intelligence. Now we can start with the requirement and we can build a new material atom by atom by atom. Already Google has used this process to produce 2 million new crystals that have never been known by humanity before. Over 380,000 new materials that we've never seen. What are we going to do with these? I think extraordinary things. So what I want you to do is understand that we used to take nature and work with it. Now we can literally paint with atoms. And we are painting atom by atom, molecule by molecule, DNA by DNA strand. We are building reality as a result of what AI is empowering us to do. Now, this matters because there is a massive race going on. It's going on in every country, and it's going on in the realm of geopolitics. And that's a race between inflation and innovation. Because innovation holds inflation down. Inflation, when it picks up, it interrupts innovation. And so there's a lot of focus on how do we get more innovation and prevent the disruptive inflation. Now, traditionally, we've relied on corporations and big institutions to do this work. But I want to describe what is on the landscape so we can begin to think about how is this going to be done in future? Will it be done the same way as in the past? So first, we are currently in a race for subspace, a race to understand and control what happens at the subatomic level, at the subcellular level, at the what you can see level. And we're also in a race for the furthest reaches of space. Now, I'm going to start with space because the first question is always, don't we have enough problems right here on Earth? Why are we bothering to go into space? Is this just billionaires joyriding? And I think the answer is absolutely not. We're going because we want to have unlimited energy. Now, how are we going to get unlimited energy from space? Well, one thing is we're starting to build stars right here on Earth. That's the equivalent of small nuclear reactors, nuclear fusion. And what do you need to do nuclear fusion? Helium-3. And where do we find helium-3? Sadly, not on Earth. We find it on the moon. And in the geopolitical world, you'll hear a lot of discussion about who is going to get to the helium-3 first. We are also racing into space to try to achieve what's called space-based solar power. That is a new, clean, green source of potentially unlimited energy. China is currently building a massive project in space. It's called the Three Gorges Dam of space. And the idea is that you catch the sun's rays in space, you convert them into radio waves, you beam them back and have unlimited energy in any power grid, anywhere in the world, anytime you want. Now, Caltech and Airbus have already demonstrated that the engineering problem is solved. The issue now is commercialization. It is making it real. So the question is, who's going to get to unlimited energy first? Now, I guarantee you that AI is a central component of figuring out how to build the infrastructure to have that unlimited energy source. Now, there will be some engineers who say, well, I don't know about this space-based solar power. NASA, for example, has had some doubts, mainly because it's expensive. And they said, well, we may be able to just dig a hole in the ground and get geothermal energy. Okay, great. That's another source of potentially unlimited energy. So suddenly our landscape of the future, where we've been competing over energy for a long time, looks very different now. We're within range of capturing this. And we're in range of using that energy to be able to capture even more. You're all familiar with the rockets that Elon Musk is building. What's important is basically what he's building now are space trucks. They go up and they come back. What are they going to bring back? The answer is we are now on the brink of beginning asteroid mining. It sounds so science fiction, but it's happening. The first private mission to begin asteroid mining happens 3 years from now. I've met the team that is about to go. Quite extraordinary. Now, to give you an idea how valuable this is, everything that we need in technology, we currently have to rip out of Earth. But now we're going to be able to get it from asteroids. This one asteroid called Psyche, which is worth looking at, is said to be worth more than the whole value of the entire economy of Earth. So, we won't have rare earth metals anymore. We will have ubiquitous, abundant space metals. Things that have been scarce are about to become abundant. Space is also going to be very different than what you think, because we're not talking about humans, I mentioned that in the earlier session, and astronauts anymore. We're talking about a world where we have AI-led, self-assembling, 3D printed, self-replicating robotics that are doing all the work. So, in order to achieve all these things, we also are now building the first truly interplanetary internet. That is in play as it stands. Right now, you can already message somebody on the moon. And you may say, but I don't know anybody on the moon. But the thing is, you're going to have operations through what I've described, space-based manufacturing as an example. So there is a race in geopolitics to get to all this abundance. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that once you get into zero gravity, you're discovering new physics. And that is extremely valuable. So we come back to, okay, how is artificial intelligence going to help us with all this? And the answer is, I mentioned it's the glue. Now, this is important because most people are stuck being knowledgeable about one kind of tech. But what's really required here is connecting the dots between all the different kinds of tech. People who are stuck in a silo and making advances with AI within that silo are not able to see the bigger picture across the landscape. Now, why not? I'd say the number one issue is lack of imagination. And I love this quote from Mark Twain where he says, you can't depend on your eyes if your imagination is out of focus. Now, why is our imagination out of focus? Well, number one, when we scan the headlines, in fact, even when we're sleeping, we have to remember there is an invisible digital dog that is sitting right next to us now 24 hours a day. And that invisible digital dog is an algorithm, and it has been trained to give you more of what you like and to fetch it as quick as it can and to fence off anything that you don't like. And so what it's doing is it's constantly narrowing the aperture of the view we have of the future. That's crucial for you in this audience. Whatever you're building, and most of you here are building something, you need to understand the broader landscape of this techplexity, not just the technology that you're working on. So I'm going to give you some quick examples of this. One is, I mentioned earlier in the panel session, the innovations in money itself, the digitization of money, the creation of an entirely new financial system based on Bitcoin tokenization with an underlying accounting system we know as today blockchain, but probably it'll be much improved and much faster. That sounds nice. You think of it as, okay, maybe I'll invest in that, maybe I won't invest in that. No. This is going to touch every one of you entrepreneurs. And I think it fundamentally represents the end of the East India Company model that has worked for several hundred years, but it is coming to be over. Many of you won't launch a company. You will launch a smart contract, and you will tokenize the work that you're doing. You won't need the company to continue forever. You just have a project, you have a customer base, you want to do some things, and then when it doesn't work anymore because things change so fast, you're going to do something else. So tokenization is literally the beginning of an entirely new way of financing the future. The way Sam Altman, Elon Musk talk about this is we are moving from a world where corporations defined what happened, where the innovation happened, to a world where 5 or 6 people will create a gathering and tokenize it, and they will be making billions. We don't need large groups of people anymore in order to achieve extraordinary innovation, which means the future of work is already starting to look a little bit like this, which is quite encouraging for many of us. And for people who today are working under very, very difficult circumstances in factories, most recently we've had all the discussion about the arguments over the tariffs, for example. One way to think about it is the tariffs are an attack on the corporations. The message from the White House to them is, you corporations took all the jobs to China, and then you paid the Chinese workers nothing. And you didn't bring any of your money back into the US, so you're paying no taxes either. So this has to end. And it is ending. And as soon as that was announced, what happened? All these young Chinese workers who've been making the products that we associate with big Western European corporations or American corporations, they went on Instagram and they said, come buy it from me. Don't buy it from the big corporation. I made it. And by the way, I have my own design ideas. And it turns out young Americans, Europeans are like, these guys are cool. Let's buy from them. And suddenly they're cutting out the corporate structure. So boom, this all cuts out Wall Street. This is a new world. It's a new world where everything we need to make an iPhone or an MRI scanner or a fighter jet or tanks, we're going to have. But the question is, do we want to build fighter jets and tanks? If we're really coming into this moment of abundance, how can it be that we are literally waiting in the news every moment now? Are we going to have a nuclear event? It's sobering to think that that is where we are in history. So I have to say I'm a bit with Peter Thiel, who says, the more powerful our technologies become, the more spiritually elevated we have to be. Now that may sound very woo-woo, but what it means is all of us have the power to create extraordinary technologies. Within that realm of techplexity, are we going to create to create or create to destroy? What is our purpose here? That is a very powerful question at this moment in time. And I think that artificial intelligence is changing the way we answer that question. It's basically augmenting who we are. And fundamentally what it's doing is it's augmenting the traditional, rational, scientific, quantitative, analytical side of our mind. And that means the energy is free to begin moving into the imaginal, the creative, the qualitative, emotional, the realm of mystery. This is a massive shift for humanity. It's not easy to move, especially any of you technical people from the audience, from the left side of your brain to the right, or the right side to the left. But that is what's happening. So think about it this way. What have we done so far? We spent all of our energy on hardware, on software, and what I would call shardware, which is when you have hardware and software and the value comes from the interface between the two. That's where the cash flows come from. But how much time have we spent on our hardware, our understanding of what's the human element of all this? What is it we're seeking to protect in humanity? How do we move from a world of scarcity to abundance peacefully? It makes us have to go back in time and actually think about General George C. Marshall, who at the end of the Second World War was faced with a situation, devastation in Europe. And what is the conclusion? He says, well, we could say it's mine, all mine, like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. We could say, we won, you lose. But no, the United States made a decision to rebuild Germany. That generosity of thinking is what's required today. So I'm going to introduce a word that none of you have ever heard. I found it in a dictionary, but it perfectly sums up what needs to happen. It's cosmopoesis. What it means is the act of world building. So not building a company or a country, but a world that we can all inhabit in future that leaves us better off than where we are today. Now, there's a wonderful philosopher called Marshall McLuhan, and he said, when we're thinking in this way, when we move from reading into symbols, it happens because we're overwhelmed with too much stuff to read. How many of you are finding there's too much stuff to read? Everyone, right? So when there's too much stuff, we start to compress all that information into symbols. Now that's important for the creative process. When you see a circle, you could see a 0, which has no value. Or you can twist it around, and what you get is an infinity sign. Unbelievable, unlimited possibilities of abundant outcomes. What gets in our way of this thinking is this kind of ongoing discussion about robotics and automation and AI are going to replace us all. But no, that isn't what's happening. What's happening is human beings are not going to have to do heavy lifting anymore, which is a good thing. And those people who are doing those jobs are actually going to get moved into things that pay better, that are more interesting: branding, marketing, sales, working on the market rather than just the product. And we have to remember, the first robotic tool was introduced in 1804, the Jacquard weaving loom. And since that time, we've had never more robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and what do we end up with? Record jobs, because we changed. So right now, I would say in the White House, we have an extraordinary thing happening, which is basically artificial intelligence has effectively been given a cabinet seat. And why? Because the argument is with a bunch of old guys who have been arguing about spending and not able to agree to stop spending, and who are leaning into conflict. And so we're starting to lean into AI to help us not have conflict. So I'd say, given here we are in Asia, there's a wonderful Buddhist saying which says, suffering comes from having an argument with reality. Well, evolution comes from adapting, right? Charles Darwin said we adapt. So I'm going to give you a few examples just to finish how we're adapting. How many of you are interested in longevity? Everybody. I used to think it was new vitamin protocols and how to sleep better. Now I realize Hewlett-Packard is no longer making printers for paper. They're using bio-ink that's made from your own blood, from your own stem cells. So if you get a burn on your arm, they can 3D print your own tissue onto you, which means we're not far from having your organs printed. If you're interested in drones, we look at a country like Rwanda. It was having a genocide only a decade ago, and today they are building the largest mega constellation of satellites on Earth. Why? Because they realize there's no Pan-African internet, and they don't have to finance it. They don't have to build them. The market will do that. This is imaginal thinking. Just as AlphaFold, the future Nobel Prizes, they're all going to go to AI. So now is the time to begin to think about infinite possibilities and not be like this poor bear that was in a Russian circus and for 7 years in a cage, and when they took the cage away, the bear still goes around in the little circles. AI is answering questions on a scale we've never known. Recently, AI cracked a code of whale language. And you know what? What did they write about in the press? Did they ask, what did the whale say? No. They wrote about the fact that whales have nicknames for the scientists studying them. Oh, what's the nickname for me? Our egos get in the way. So I'll finish with this. AI is forcing us to ask the question, what does it mean to be human? It is forcing us to face a world that is arriving incredibly fast. Complexity is at the heart of it. So it's not enough to know your technology. You have to understand how it fits into a broader landscape. Hardware. What is the impact on humans? Because you are the technology. And we are very lucky we are being augmented by these innovations so that we don't have to spend so much time being analytical, and we can spend more of our time being imaginal, and hopefully that means less time fighting, less time worrying about, are we going to let off a nuclear weapon, or are we going to let off the possibilities of abundance in our future? So I'll finish with that. Thank you so much.